Okay, I've got us recording. I don't know why the volume went
I've
down.
only been pulled over once in my life. I'm driving red Mustang, so driving ain't that fun anymore. Hey, Shorty. Yeah. Position. Morrow. And we'll start. Our first order of business is draft of all seniors. And we have, what is it? Yes, Chair and Board, we've, one of the things that had come, to light was that there's some, with our travel policy and personal use of county vehicles, throughout the county, there's been a past practice to, extend on the list of who's, involved with that.
For there might be some people in the room that don't know Mr. Blackwell, maybe we can just introduce him so they know he's our county attorney.
Yes.
Okay.
So Bob Blackmore is with Innova Legal Solutions, and he is our contracted out legal counsel to help support needs of the county. He works with Justin and Nelson and I. This is the first time you're attending the board meeting in that official capacity. So
could you explain what his role is in this? Is he just here to answer questions or what?
well, he's helped create and kind of review the information that I submitted because this is a policy issue and has taxable impacts. We wanted to make sure we're on good solid ground. Bob has dealt with this for other municipalities and so has a wealth of knowledge on that. What I just handed out to the commissioners was a decision tree on this first document here, and then a article that talks about commuting valuation rules that Bob had prepared and sent over to me earlier today. So we wanted to print that off and make that available. The intent with this work session is to discuss possible options to get us into compliance with the travel policy, or expand it under the necessary guidance of the IRS rules. And so I've done a little bit of research, but I kind of like having Bob here to take care of a lot of those items. So what we have is whenever an employer provides a vehicle for employees, there's specific rules that if the employee commutes home with it, that it can be considered a fringe benefit. In the private sector, generally the governments can actually write that off as part of their compensation or whatnot. So it's a little bit easier. So you see the construction vehicles being taken home, and it's very easy for them to write that off as an expense. When it comes to governments, it's a little bit different approach because we cannot do that. And so there is certain parameters under the fringe benefit rules where we have to consider whether it is a fringe benefit and therefore taxable for the employee. Those are generally not able to be picked up. Those costs in that taxable burden is not able to be picked up by the county. We've had some instances where people are signed to take those vehicles home. And as we have in our travel policy, it's very limited to kind of first responders. The sheriff, the undersheriff, detectives that in unmarked vehicles, patrol deputies. One of the things that I did notice as we were going through, we don't have sergeants listed under that list, and that's something we need to take care of. That's expanded under certain areas. Two other ones that are listed are the director of public works and the maintenance supervisor, which we've changed to the deputy director of public works. So we need to clean that up a little bit as well. So as we look at that, there's other instances of going at that expands beyond those definitions, and some of them are represented unionized employees, And so if we were to change anything with that policy, since this has been a standing practice, we need to notify them, go into possible bargaining on that issue, or just notifying them on the change of the policy. As we go through this, how we take care of it, wanted to either terminate that and consolidate it under the current travel policy, or expand it and provide a fringe benefit, which would then require a certain level of reporting, is the consideration. And with that, I'd love to just pass it over to Bob for any comments, and actually to kind of walk it through the decision tree with his background and information. This is an issue that has been sitting out there, and we'd like to get that resolved. And so with that, turn it over to Bob just to have you kind of talk through the issue, if that's okay.
Sure, I'd be happy to do so. First of all, the policy that the county currently has in place, we were asked to look at that, see if it was compliant with the law, and it is compliant with the law, but application of the law to different situations is complex, and you have to be able to follow through exactly who the parties are that are using the county vehicles, what capacity they're using them, what their position is. And when you do that, then you can go through and determine how you have to account for it. Just consider that any time you give a car to a county employee for commuting, that is a taxable fringe benefit. So any employee that uses a car and they're commuting, you start with the concept that it's a taxable fringe. Then there are exceptions, and the exceptions are complex. They're difficult to follow. And I appreciate Matt's confidence in me, but I wouldn't say I'm an expert in all of this. I've certainly, looked through it, and we're trying to give you some decision trees on how to walk through it, because a lot depends upon the individual, people involved, what their job descriptions are, even goes into control person categories, which depends upon compensation levels, all IRS mandate. So your policy as it presently stands does not violate the IRS requirements. We provided several other county provisions or as to how they address it, and they can be more specific. They go into greater detail and help walk through the process of decision making and how you determine what is and what is not a taxable fringe benefit. There have been several issues that Matt and I have discussed that deal with individuals commuting countywide, and that's an issue because you are a large county and you have long distances to travel, sometimes between Boardman and Hefner, Lexington, Ione. And so there are these concepts of a tax home for an employee and a tax home for a county. And if an employee commutes to a tax home for a county and then picks up a car, works at that location, and then goes to other locations, they are exempt. That's not a commuting expense. But if they go to, for example, from Ione to Lexington, don't perform any work at Lexington, just pick up a car and then commute up to Boardman or commute to Hefner, then that is a commuting benefit. That's a taxable fringe benefit, and you have to decide how it's going to be accounted for. And typically, if an employee receives a taxable fringe benefit, it becomes part of their pay. It goes into your pay stub. It becomes part of compensation. They pay taxes on it at the end of the year. So trying to define what that is and how that works is very important for the employees and for the county. You also have people that are parole officers, probation officers. That was another area of concern that we have discussed. And as long as they're using a clearly marked vehicle, they're a public safety officer, and they are eligible to drive those vehicles without that becoming compensation to them. But if they are not clearly marked vehicles, then that is a taxable fringe benefit. unless they basically are carrying guns and are charged with certain enforcement actions in that capacity. So you have to look at the facts and circumstances surrounding the individual's use, whether that is a taxable fringe benefit or not a taxable fringe benefit. And then there are different ways to pay for that fringe benefit. There are several different rules that apply. And you're not going to become an expert in it today. I don't think anyone can. It's a bit complicated. That's why we tried to work through a decision tree, present that to you so you had some idea of what your accounting staff needs to look at as they try to categorize these issues and decide what is and is not a taxable fringe benefit. So that we don't run afoul of the IRS rules. There's also an overlying issue in that for Oregon government ethics, employees cannot get a benefit solely because of their position as a public employee. So that's an overriding issue in terms of, are they being provided something solely because of their position? Not aware of anything like that occurring at this point, but it's something to keep in mind, because once you get benefits, you can't just get it because of your position. Now, it could be made a part of compensation. Then the county could consider it in that light. So there's a way to deal with that if, in fact, we're looking at that type of situation. But I think the main concern that Matt had and that I had in looking at this was to make sure that you were compliant with the law in your existing policy. We do suggest that you might want to expand that policy to include additional information, so it's easier to follow. And then there are specific questions that will come up with specific individuals based upon their position. So that's an overview of what we're looking at. Matt, I don't know if you want me to go further on anything here, but I think, basically we're in compliance at the moment, but it's more of an application issue. And we have to look at the individual employees to make sure that we are applying it correctly.
Yes. So as we look at it and consider this, our current policy does limit it to very specific positions. We do have employees in positions beyond that list that do take vehicles home. And so we'd have to see if they qualify and go under the current policy, or if we're willing to open an opportunity for allowing other people to bring out, other than more or less the IRS qualified positions, in order to have a taxable fringe benefit and provide that for the effectiveness and of performing county duties and such. Do that. We need some direction from the board, and we've provided that in the write-up, some of the commuting rules and cents per mile and annual lease values of it. There's pros and cons to each of those, and wanted to discuss with the board if that was something considered, or if we should more or less just go with the qualified personal use of vehicle definition set up by the IRS.
I think for the folks that it can be applied to, I think it will be a fairly easy way to expand the policy and address some of that. And then I don't know, how many folks do we have who are control employees?
That's an interesting question, and that's one I would have to ask Bob if he knows. Is that total compensation or just salary with the $145,000 cap on? Or
well, that's your compensation, and it's tied to the federal, I think it's L5 compensation amount. And as my understanding is that includes all your compensation. that you receive is in terms of salary. Now, there might be some gray areas as to what is salary and what is not. We'd have to take a look at that.
Okay, so we'd have to define that. With that, I mean, you'd be looking at, you know, more or less, you know, our top tier. I don't have a vehicle setting. But, you know, sheriff under sheriff, maybe possibly some of the lieutenants, if you're looking at total compensation, they would definitely, qualify underneath there. But I believe most of those would be qualified non-personal use vehicles as long as they are respond and are marked.
Yeah.
And, taken into consideration.
I'd like to hear from the undersheriff and the sheriff here, because they extensively have vehicles. And this will good or not, before I even consider, I'd like to hear, would you guys like to come up and talk about what your thoughts are on all this?
And we specifically let them know about this one and had talked with them in the past they did, so I would appreciate their input as well.
Good afternoon, Commissioners.
Before you start,
Go ahead.
feel free to ask the attorney too,
Perfect. Appreciate that.
because that's what we said.
John Bowles, Morrow County Sheriff. Brian Snyder, Under Sheriff. So this question was brought to my attention months ago and then again yesterday. And so we started doing research to make sure that, I mean, we thought we were following the IRS rules, and after research, we absolutely are. And there wasn't a whole lot of talk about the unmarked vehicles. But the unmarked vehicles that we are taking home, I mean, they're clearly in the IRS unmarked rules. We're following all the rules there. And just for the people who don't know, you know, law enforcement, how everything works, those cars are equipped with emergency equipment, cages, lights, the driver's gun, uniform, badge, all that good stuff for law enforcement. And so, and in the IRS rules as well, they talk about police officers and they talk about law enforcement. So law enforcement, under the law enforcement definition through the IRS, it also includes probation officers. And with the probation officers in my office, they're fully equipped, vest, gun. Their vehicles are fully equipped with lights, sirens, cages. They make arrests, they do transports. They're not on call, but they are available for call out 24 hours a day. And so that's part of the following the IRS rules as well. So, and I appreciate Mr. Blackmore mentioning there is a lot in this IRS rules, you know, and it's kind of confusing to understand, but it's pretty much there in black and white what you can and can't do. So it's, after I dove into it, it's actually pretty easy to understand. So.
I guess my question, we're actually dealing with two separate things here. What's the IRS allowed, which we would have to track if it's not. And then who's allowed to drive vehicles, right? So there's two different parts to this.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. And in my mind, it's, okay, if it's not allowed under IRS, then the county is going to have a more accounting burden.
There will have to be some way to determine the compensation and what that fringe benefit.
With that, I'd like to ask Kevin, do you have anything you want to chime in on this? Because are you not the one that it would fall to?
I believe most of it would be contained in processing of payroll, depending on which methodology is used, but then there's, you know, audit and oversight, so there would be some responsibilities there.
Who do you envision taking care of oversight? I mean, I read some of this here, you know, either one, or they, you know, they're gonna pay so much for one-way trip, whatever.
Yeah. So
Check to make sure they do this.
generally, the issue that we've had is we did have a couple positions were, some of them, one was pointed out and it was a complaint for internally was the parole officers out of here again. They do, several of them do take their vehicles home. And that's been kind of a gray determination. And if we've got it where they carry their guns, it's marked and such, then that means they could be under the qualified non-personnel use. We do have in Public Works, we've got the two. We also have one other individual who takes it home, our foreman. And so we have to clarify if that's a qualified use. And that's a little bit more challenging. We do have our emergency manager that takes a rig home. So
it's gonna be their department head or supervisor that monitors this. And make
Well,
sure that they get the-
as far as monitoring, have to have a setup. So there is authorization by the county administrator or the BOC for any kind of things. But it doesn't say, but our policy doesn't say if someone takes it home that's not in this list, how we handle it. And so that's what we're kind of talking about today. If they're not a qualified non-personal use of the vehicle, how do we do it? We can't just authorize it because it's a taxable fringe benefit, and we run afoul of potential IRS issues. And so as we look at this, we as far as who would track it, those authorizations, whether it's solely under the county administrator or if it wanted to have approved through BOC, we would approve that, select the format for reporting that taxable fringe benefit, and it would just be tracked under the through payroll. They would be notified, and whether it's the commuting rule of $3 per day, we would just track that. If we decided on a more reflective of it, the cents per mile could be as well. The annual lease, I think the only one that I think would really qualify as a control employee would definitely fall underneath the qualified non-personal use vehicles, because it would be these two individuals right here who have county vehicles, and they're both law enforcement, as you can see.
We would all qualify as control employees.
But this is where our policy protects you, because it is kept at a county office and you only use it on business use. That is an okay utilization of your county vehicles. That's one reason why you have to drive into Lexington before you jump in your car, because it's at the county offices. And so that doesn't isn't considered taking home and using for commuting.
Okay.
I'll ask the sheriff, where do you see this diverging from what your current use is, right? How are you using your vehicles right now?
Well, after reviewing this, I don't see it changing at all. We are clearly following the IRS rules, went through, and even the emergency management, that's came up a few different times. The emergency management vehicle, I'm reading an audit on emergency management vehicle. The emergency management vehicle is equipped with emergency equipment. He's probably got more equipment in that vehicle than we have in our vehicle. He's available for call out 24 hours a day, and we've called them out several times outside of normal working hours. And those are situations where we don't have time, for example, I need you to go to Oregon and pick up your vehicle and drive back down to Ione for this emergency. We absolutely do not have time in those situations to do that. And in the IRS rules, it clearly addresses those situations. And for people that don't know, law enforcement and emergency response is way different than other departments in the vehicles. And in the IRS rules, they talk about personal use and commuting a lot. Personal use, like for example, some companies, they let the people take the car home. They could use it with shopping, do whatever. And they even mention in the IRS rules about people taking the cars on vacation, but they have to log mileage and track everything and pay the taxes for that stuff. So,
and we're not doing any of that. That's kind of the point, is none of our vehicles that are take-home vehicles currently are being used for personal use. It is when they're on duty and only when they're on duty. They don't even go get it serviced off duty. So they're either on duty to go get the oil changed, or it doesn't get done, or tire repair, or any other maintenance on the vehicle. So our vehicles by our own sheriff's office policy is very strict. They are not allowed to use it for personal use for any reason. It just doesn't get used. It is for work and work only. And every one of our take home rigs, specifically, parole and probation, the sheriff, myself, and the lieutenant, and even the emergency manager by definition, and I know the sheriff's mentioned it, but they're unmarked, yes, but they're also by one of the requirements, they are equipped with safety lights. Every one of them are. They're equipped with radios, and they are mission critical. Equipment are installed into those vehicles. It's secured communication, and it helps with the effect of coordinating emergencies or investigation opportunity or operations.
And even the unmarked, they are not, by our rules or our policy at the sheriff's office, used for any personal use. I mean, they're just not done. And it's
So-
been that way for so long.
Under your opinion right now, the vehicles that are being used are falling under the IRS rules.
Absolutely. There's no question.
Yes. Well,
Yeah, I just wanted to comment, you're talking a lot about how they're equipped. The real question is are they clearly marked? So if they're equipped inside the vehicle and you don't know that it's a government vehicle, that's an unmarked vehicle. And then the different rules apply for an unmarked vehicle. So if you have a little insignia in the corner that says, in the corner of a window that says owned by Morrow County, that's not clearly marked. There's been a lot of activity with regard to defining what clearly marked is. And just think about it from the viewpoint, if you look at it, do you know it's a government vehicle? And if it's a government vehicle, just by looking at it, because it's clearly marked from the outside, okay, great, then that's under one set of rules. If it's not clearly marked, then you go by another set of rules. And that set of rules is not, again, really focused on how it's equipped internally. It's a different approach and we're talking about, is the person using it in public safety authorized to carry firearms? Are they authorized to execute search warrants and make arrests? And do they regularly carry firearms? So those are some of the tests that you have to look at about a qualified officer status as well.
Right. So Bob, you're saying that some of these maybe should have the Morrow County decal on the side.
Well, they should if you want to go by the clearly marked ruling, by that process. I know some people prefer to go by unmarked, and I think that's pretty strict. From the IRS perspective, back in 2009 and 10 is when I was working with the IRS trying to get them to allow fire chiefs to use unmarked vehicles, and they would not go there. They said, no, we're going to stick to our strict rules on firearms and other such things. And if they're using it without it being marked, then they're going to have a fringe benefit that's taxable fringe. So yes, you're correct. You have to look at it. And if you see that it's a government vehicle by looking at it, then that's clearly marked. And if you can't tell that, then it's unmarked and it's a different set of rules.
And so on that real quick, if I could jump in. So I'm just going to read the IRS definition for the unmarked vehicle from the IRS rules. So unmarked law enforcement vehicles. So and in the definition for law enforcement, so you notice right here, it doesn't say police officer. So law enforcement, there's different areas that they consider law enforcement, and probation falls under that law enforcement person because they can do arrests. They have more arrest authority than we do right now. And that's the way it is across the state. The probation officers have a little bit more law enforcement authority. I mean, for example, they can sit down, somebody doesn't show up to their office like they're scheduled to, they can sit down and write a warrant for that person right there. We can't do that. We have to have probable cause to make an arrest and try to get a warrant through the DA's office. Probation officer, they can write the warrant right there and enter that in the system, and that's in the system. So that's just kind of a little background there. But the unmarked law enforcement vehicles, these vehicles qualify if used by a law enforcement officer, a full-time governmental employee responsible for crime prevention, investigation, authorized to carry firearms, make arrests, and who regularly carries firearms. And just on that, our probation, like I said, they're uniformed, they wear vests, and they wear firearm 24 hours. I mean, when they're on duty or if they're called out, they have a firearm. Any personal use, including commuting, must be officially authorized and related to law enforcement functions such as reporting to a stakeout. Recreational trips do not qualify. The vehicle must also contain law enforcement equipment like radio, lights, and sirens. And they all have that. But that issue came about, vehicles marked, and we all see vehicles that were, driving down the road, government use only and all that kind of stuff. So, and it came up with the emergency management vehicle as well. So we did mark the emergency management vehicle. It's clearly marked on the door and all that kind of stuff. And we also marked the prone probation vehicles. Even though we didn't have to by the unmarked vehicle rule, we did.
So what you're saying is you're complying right at this time.
Absolutely. And just another point, there's over 180 law enforcement agencies in the state of Oregon. That doesn't include the feds or U.S. Marshals.
Cause when I got there Monday night, I went and looked, I wanted to find some count, it's always best to look and see.
Yep,
Far I wanted to look at the,
I did the same thing.
yeah, I looked at Jackson County, I looked at Douglas County, they're rural counties. They got similar to us, and they carve out a special section for law enforcement.
Mhm.
And they deal with the IRS too, but that's the overriding governance. It falls outside of that you have to pay the amount. So
Right.
I'm trying.
And again, there's absolutely no personal
I didn't have a lot
use.
of time to read it. We got this kind of late. So I'm trying to get my mind around it. So, that maybe. What are we wanting to change?
So there is, from my reading on the areas, there is gray areas on probation being considered under law enforcement. They work on there. Probation is not always under it. However, in our operations, they are, they go through Leo certification. So it's, are they packing guns all the time, not just occasionally? They're not marked, and so that triggers a question gray area. And we had the question and come up about, allowing this or certifying this. And our policy specifies a certain list. And so we either need to expand that, which we talked with the sheriff previously about, or we need to make sure it's taken care of under taxable fringe benefit. And so as far as this policy, we want to expand it with clarification on this, listing probationary officers and that gives us clear definition and direction. And so if we don't want to expand it beyond the very specific law enforcement that's currently set up, then we need to set up some other consideration for it. Our neighbors to the east, Umatilla County, passes a yearly order that says these are the people who are listed on for law enforcement to take care of things. I don't know if we want to do it yearly or just include it in the policy.
Honestly, if it was done yearly, that would cover. I think we're in the situation, I would say, just from the sheriff's office side and law enforcement side, where I think we're in the situation right now with the county because the county policy has not been updated.
Yeah.
I mean, I think that's the issue. There's only a couple, in the county policy, I reviewed the county policy in one section. All that needs to be added is under sheriff, lieutenant, and criminal division can have unmarked vehicles that they take home. And in the other section, what needs to be added is probation and emergency management. In those two sections, and I got them saved.
And the sergeant.
And the sergeant.
Now,
Well, sergeants are fully marked and all that stuff anyway. So,
Yeah, that's true.
yeah.
Now, on our current policy, do you have the authority to, I'm not talking IRS, I'm talking county policy, do you have the authority to allow someone to go outside the policy?
That's the one where it says county administrator and or
And/or,
BOC.
Okay,
And so, clarifying that as well would be helpful. I mean, if the BOC wants it, let's do it. I don't want to be authorizing things and then you guys are going, what? Yes, exactly.
well,
And so that figuring that out and fine tuning that, and again, like I said, the option one, we clarify that travel policy, add a few of these. Now, I would caution, and I would want to make sure we vet this out a little bit more. I want to make sure that they're there because just because we pass and change the policy doesn't mean the IRS is going to look at it other ways. Bob was telling me he had to tell the fire chief that, you know, they went all the way to the IRS and the unmarked fire chief's vehicle wasn't authorized. Now, that's different because they're not responding and arresting people potentially 24/7. So, but you know, that's the humdinger that we have right now is we have a policy that has a limited list of people. We've had employees notice that other people are taking vehicles home. So we need to, that's why we're workshopping it to see which direction you'd prefer to have us go.
I would like to see us expand the policy and then to also include a commuting rule for folks who do not fall under that so that we then have this is what we do in these scenarios outside of this.
Who's going to authorize who gets to use them?
You want to have that, yeah, in my seat, or would you like that to be brought
I'd
before
like it to
BOC?
come to the BOC, because if you have a policy and you go outside that policy, I think it's the BOC's job to allow that. That's my thought. However, I did see on one of them, and I think it was Jackson, they allowed the sheriff to designate vehicles outside because of the emergency manner. They're treated special. You guys are treated special because of your mix, you know, you're on call so much and all that. But they did allow the sheriff to specify certain vehicles, but
Only
But
within the
that's separate
sheriff.
from
Only within the sheriff's office does the sheriff have that
Oh, yeah,
authority
yeah,
to,
right
only
within
within
the
the
sheriff's
sheriff's
office,
office,
yeah.
yeah.
no, but yeah, it would be like a department, yeah. You wouldn't have, they didn't have to come to the BOC to get approval, the sheriff, but that doesn't cover the IRS part. That just says you're not violating county policy by using this vehicle in this manner, so. Or like you said, set a list, have it approved by the BOC. And then have the, you know, set the policy, and if Matt wants to, you know, comes into a situation where he wants to expand that, should be looking at him, then he does.
And so, you know, just clarifying that, making sure we're covered the bases with the IRS, so we don't call it the issue. Is what we're looking to do. And so, you know, working through the gray issue on those two items. And I do appreciate Commissioner Peterson considering saying, okay, let's have a policy that if we need to set it up, it's taxable fringe benefit.
No, and I totally agree,
Yeah.
because I know the situation he's in, and that's frustrating. I just want to make sure who gets to,
Oh, yeah.
yeah, you know, who gets to, and not necessarily you, but, you know, somebody lower down. You know, so there's, who's gonna decide that in the end if you're gonna go outside policy? Myself, I'd like to be able to see.
I mean, I would say if we add the commuting rule to the policy, then we're not going outside of the policy because it's in the policy, just what I would suggest.
Well, just for you.
No, the commuting rule
I mean,
can't apply. The commuting rule can't, I'm specifically addressing one of the options, and the commuting rule can't apply to me. This would be specifically for employees who are not control employees, and that's the $3 per day flat rate.
I have concerns about that.
If we-
I'd rather keep it tight than have us approve.
Then we should sell more of our county vehicles and not use them at all. That's my
No,
opinion.
that's not what I'm saying.
That's what I am saying.
Well, then go ahead
Yeah.
and propose that, if that's what you want to do. That's not what I'm proposing. No. You know, I'm just proposing, because myself have seen abuse happen. With abuse.
And from what I read, I mean, Mr. Blackmore might be able to correct me on this, but from what I'm read, it sounds to me like the Board of Commissioners can decide outside of policy if a vehicle can be used by somebody, but then they just have to pay that tax
Mm-mm.
on that. Yes.
Yes.
Yeah.
That's what I'm aiming for.
Yep.
Yeah.
Agreed. Yeah, then it becomes a taxable fringe benefit to that employee.
And that avoids any issues. Right now, we have gray areas that could be construed as issues, and so we can work on that. So if that's the case, we can look to flesh that out. Be happy to work with Bob and the sheriff's office to continue to fine tune that and work on the process for allowing the fringe benefit taxation as authorized for drivers by the BOC.
It works for me.
Works for me.
Yep.
With the clarification, Sheriff, I mean, you said that the parole and probation and emergency management, they're marked now. So if I were passed them on bombing range, I'd be able to know that that's what that was.
So it came up about the vehicles being marked.
Right.
And so the emergency management vehicle is clearly marked. You pass by it, you will know, I mean, it's marked.
It's if I may, it's a 2 foot by 2 foot decal on both the front doors.
Somewhere,
So it
it's
said-
on my car.
And it said, and it says EM, emergency management. So
Yeah.
Yeah. And the prone probation, I mean, they fall under the definition of the unmarked. They follow all the rules in there on that. But there is,
so we put on the back of the, let's say there's 3 of them. 4 of the PMP vehicles that, on the back, it says official use only.
So what would be the downside to putting a large decal on the door?
So on which vehicle?
Parole and probation.
So the downside, if I may, is, the downside is specifically for parole and probation. Cops aren't always liked. And when you're a client and you've been dealing with law enforcement and, you've been arrested for whatever the reason, you typically, very commonly, there is more of a dislike for law enforcement. And it also, so when they go and do their home visits, the clients do not want a car out front of their house screaming that their cops are there. And so one, it's how do I say that? It kind of it all follows under officer safety. You get, and compliance. You got a car sitting out in front of your house that says Morrow County Sheriff's Office or some police department or state police, you're going to get less compliance and you're going to raise the risk to the officers. They're trying, the parole and probation, their goal is to get compliance. They've already been arrested, or the client's already been arrested. He's been sentenced. He's got to pay his dues for, his crime. Their goal is to try to get compliance as much as possible so they can be successful in their rehabilitation and become I always mess up the word, but an active member of society. And they're no longer, draining the government, for us specifically, the county, with court costs and personnel and stuff like that. So that's why. I mean, that's I guess I'm trying to.
Not knowing the things.
Yeah, that is why. And I mean, we find with it in law enforcement for our patrol deputies, they are marked. We don't have a patrol. Well, we don't have an actual patrol car that's not marked. That's the only job they do is patrol. We go to a house, they don't answer the door, not even for a piece of paper. It could be a subpoena, small claims, whatever, but we do civil services. They won't answer the door for us. Morrow County Sheriff, well, it's the cops. We're not answering the door. We just had a case specifically. We were just talking about it this morning. Deputy Duvall did really well. He'd been trying several times, which we are legally obligated and mandated to serve civils. And plus there's fees, we collect fees and blah, blah, blah. But he tried for several days to try to serve this civil in his
those are
patrol car.
court documents.
He's knocking on the door, the kid, cops, and nada. For days he does this. So he finally gets smart, starts trying to learn, or not finally, but he learns I know that said that wrong. But anyways, he goes outside the box and learns their schedule. And he's sitting in the driveway when dad shows up after work. And he finally got him served. The unmarked eliminates a lot of that. Sure, they're in uniform. They are carrying a gun. They never ever come to work without their gun and their badge and their uniform on. But that marked unit is a big flag. And I've been doing this a very long time. I've held every one of those positions, well, other than PNP, but I was a detective for a long time, and those unmarked vehicles are essential for doing some of their jobs and making those contacts and being successful in those type of investigations and home visits.
And it's not just Morrow County, it's not just our office. I can't think of one agency where you see a Umatilla County probation like a patrol car. They're not marked like that, and there's reasons why they're not marked, you know. And it's historically like that. It's nothing like we've done new that we started last week, because we think, oh, this is a good idea. This is a benefit for us. No, you know, doing everything else that every other agency is doing. Like I said.
Not knowing.
Yeah, no, I really appreciate the question, because without knowing and understanding, and I've gotten it from my family, years ago, like, you're just trying to be cool. No, it has nothing to do with that. It's the fact that I can get into more stuff and get further sometimes than a marked patrol car, because it's not screaming cop. Yeah, when I get out, sure, I'm in uniform, but I'm already there.
And sheriff and undersheriff, you can probably chime in on this. This is where the IRS sees things black and white. But in the rural counties, I mean, you go into a city and you have probationary officers that aren't even under the police. They're in a different department, so they aren't LEOs, law enforcement officers.
Well, actually, I'll correct you on that. They are law enforcement officers. They're not police officers.
Well, across
They
the
could-
nation, not always.
Yeah, they could be. They don't have to be supervised by the sheriff. They can be supervised by the state, but they're still a law enforcement probation officer.
But
They're not a police officer.
but they wouldn't be responding the way you all do.
Correct.
In our situation.
Yeah, they're not responding to our search and rescues and some of our emergencies. That is correct. So that's not blanket across the nation.
So
They would respond the same as our probation officers would do, though.
Yeah.
The probation officers, their job in Morrow County is the same as in Umatilla County or Jackson County. The probation job is the same across the state. So, because it's regulated by the state.
So this is where the IRS says probation officers might not be. Well, in our situation, they are. And so this is where having the policy to back that up and list that would clarify and hopefully bulletproof us in that way.
And under the IRS, they're not considered police officers. They're considered law enforcement officers. They fall under that umbrella of law enforcement officers. Again, they get carry the gun, the uniform, they make arrests. They get to do search warrants. We don't get to do write the warrants on that kind of stuff. So they do a lot of the same duties that we do. So, but they're not considered a police officer. They're a law enforcement officer.
Well, I think we've got direction. Do you feel you've got a direction moving forward?
So you mentioned this group about getting together and talking about the policy and whatever. Who's going to be in that group?
I was thinking it'd be Bob, myself, and either usually the sheriff or Brian just to work through that and get that list set up so we can bring it back to the BOC for consideration.
I think that's a good idea.
Absolutely.
You good with that?
I don't know. Does he make a choice?
And
Thumbs up will be good.
Bob, did you freeze or are you still in?
I'm here.
Okay. So that we can take that under direction and we'll do kind of hybrid. Expand that for appropriate listing and also have an option for the commuting as needed.
That's good.
Okay.
Well, like it. Okay. Okay.
Thank you, Sheriff.
Thank you. Thank you, Commissioners.
Thank you.
Matt, goodbye.
And Bob, unless you're really interested in our county fees and want to do it pro bono, we can bid you farewell.
I'll leave you to handle that, Matt.
Okay, thank
Bye,
you.
everyone.
Thanks, Mom. Okay, next up.
That is. And with this, we have not updated the county fee schedule since 2022 and 2021 in certain aspects of it. Earlier in 2025, we sent out requests to all departments and elected offices about adjusting the fees. It's taken us a little bit of time to get this on the prioritization with other things. But we've pulled together a list of the different tables that have considerations on this. Generally, your fee schedules can only be touched twice a year, so you don't increase them every month. That's not the entire fee schedule. That's the separate tables and such and separate fees. And here we have several of the items that we've received, anything from minor to major updates on the fee schedules, and that's why some of our department heads are here. Because it is a fee schedule consideration, this is something where it doesn't say specifically that it requires a public hearing, but it needs to be allowed to have residents to make comment whenever we implement or change a fee. And so before we did that, we just wanted to bring this up in a work session if you had any questions about the proposed fee schedules. Some of these represent unrealized inflationary consideration, and some of these haven't been touched for years. Others, like a couple in the planning ones, just with the impact load on some of the requests in that, the fee doesn't really compensate accordingly for the hours that are used. Other ones we have, we did separate parks out into a separate table where it used to be under Public Works, and with that reorganization, we wanted to do that. We did include the Fair and Rodeo. They had some minor changes on their building rentals and added a winter RV consideration. And so with these, we wanted to bring these to your attention and see if you had any questions or concerns about this before we prepared an ordinance to go forward and make known to the public.
Well, I think what I would like to do before we talk is ask the staff if they have anything they want to add to it, because Fair and Rodeo's on here. Do you guys have anything you want to say about it, or before we start talking?
I don't have anything to add. I think all my changes have been shown.
All right.
One thing just to note, Robin let us know she shared the environmental health contract to Umatilla County. Their fees were a bit higher because they've kept up with the adjustments, and since they operate in that, it would be good to be consistent on there. And so that's one that has some significant increases. The other ones, we have the transfer station switching over to the weight area and airport hangar rentals. We've increased that because those haven't been increased for 5 years, 4 or 5 years. So, Eric, did you have?
Do we need to address the unmanned aircraft fees or do that another time?
That's one that we didn't have here on it, and we would like to add that. There's some why don't you explain it, Eric?
Yeah, it's been reported during public BOC meetings before about the unmanned aircraft. The UAS is using the Lexington Airport for their research and development. And this when Sandy was managing the airport at the time. It's still happening. So there are some Connex boxes up there for companies to rent that space so they don't have to move equipment back and forth. And then they use the airport taxiway to do their testing. It's a great place for them because it's quiet. There's not a lot of looky-loos, and we have what they're looking for in conditions. So it was a great opportunity. We have found since that our fees are probably half what they should be.
Okay, so find that in another secondary update.
Either that, or we could have that included when we bring the ordinance for it, and just be sure to talk through that with you when we consider it.
Because on that note, on what's included here in the airport fee schedule, unless it's coded some way that I don't understand, I don't see those as being even on the fee schedule, so
We missed it.
so we should,
It's
again, when it comes
We
back
brought it
to,
to Matt's attention late, like last week or Monday.
so we should get those on the list and figure out what the appropriate price is.
Okay. We've got 2 questions. So for the health surveying, when we got a contract with Umatilla County, Are our rates set by Umatilla County? Or how specifically does that work out? If we were to have really low rates, but we're contracting with Umatilla and they have really high rates, how would that play out?
I'm certain that it's set by Umatilla County.
Okay,
I think because they keep all the fees. Yeah.
So if Gus has a restaurant, he has to pay Umatilla County the inspection fee.
And so we really should
Correct.
get our fee schedule up to what's actually being charged.
Yes.
so just to accurately reflect what it is. Okay, correct. Okay, I'm following now. How much do we send to Umatilla County for this now? So if they're getting fee money and we're contracting with them to do it, are they making out good on this?
Not that I'm aware of. I think they basically kind of.
I think we
that
did a cost analysis on this and found out that for us to take it on ourselves, it would be more expensive.
Oh, absolutely,
Yeah.
absolutely. The amount that
We don't-
if we hired our own person to do that, it would be much more costly to the county.
Yeah.
That's,
So few of them too.
they just keep.
But by the time we bring this back to the BOC, we could have an answer to that, just saying, here's the contracted rate and here's the report on it.
Yeah, that'd be
Just
I'd
for
be
your
interested.
information.
Yes, thank you. So thank you, that answers that question. And then the second, what are the countywide fees? What is computer time, $75 an hour? Who are we feeing for that? What is that?
So this is, partially, one of those is for, return checks. Instead of listing it on every department, we have it listed there. For computer time, some of it could be applicable to information requests. And if it's more than just a necessary thing, we can do that. Or if someone were to come in and possibly use the computers to do research in that, we could bill them for that amount. I don't know if we've really been doing that too much, but it's potentially a possible fee or fine that user fee for consideration. I think that's a holdover as well from back when people didn't have computers really available, but
That makes somewhat sense to me. Not at all. Okay. Those were my only questions. Everything else seems, in line with being reasonable. So,
Any other? Is there, no. That, good.
no, sir. This is just, this is an update. Whenever we talk about fees, people question. So I want to make it that ahead of you.
Okay.
Sorry, I wasn't sure if you were, I just wanted to know, I think most of these are in the planning department. We highlighted and redlined. If you have any questions, let me know. There is one that I wanted to explain, and that was something I learned at AOC, or actually it was before that. Many counties, or keep in mind, many counties are fee-based, so Deschutes County. So when the economy's booming, they have a big staff. When the economy slows down, they lay people off. I hope we never ever go to that. It's hard to manage a program, and it's hard on the people. One of the things that counties, regardless of whether or not they're fee-based or not, they have a surcharge for a whole bunch of items. And so on page, I guess 4, let's see, table 1, 2, page 4, we put a long range planning surcharge, 10% per application. And that really has some policy implications. I put it out there really not knowing if you'd support it or not, but it is a way for us to generate a little bit more revenue and maybe set aside funds to do more long range planning than we do. This past year we did a couple of projects. We'll do a couple of this year. We also have, because of something I think Matt and Chelsea and I might, and Kevin come with in the next month or so, one energy project, we generated $250,000 with their surcharge, and that was the Next Era project. So I was going to come and ask permission. It would require a budget adjustment, or maybe not. to contract to do some codification of our comprehensive plan. City of Boardman did that, and it cost them about $150,000. And I'm just sharing that because we usually wait for either a real low lull in permits, which we're not seeing, and you'll see our end of year 2025 permit count is still very, very high. And we usually wait for that lull to do anything like really uncover the comprehensive plan and do some meaningful updates. We've caught a few things since I've been here in the last 5 years. We've updated portions of chapter 3. We've updated the housing section. We're now working on the recreation element, and this year we'll start our goal 12 transportation plan update, but it's difficult. And I've also been training people for the last 3 years, so it's hard to do my job, train others, and then carve out to do other long range planning. Water stuff might slow down, which might give me some time. Anyway, I'm rambling on a little bit, but you can tell me today to remove that, or you want to keep it there to think about it. It's just another way to generate some extra revenue with the land use application.
So, I'm glad you brought that up. So when I looked at that, so it says per land use application. So I go back up there, and so a subdivision is $600. So then we're gonna charge 10% more on top of that?
Yes.
So why don't we just make the rate $660 instead of 600 with a surcharge?
That's exactly.
Surcharge.
That's exactly the kind of feedback I'm looking for. And also remember, many counties, their fees are based on a time study. And I know Kevin and Matt want to get to that, and we haven't got to that yet. So by law, we are not allowed to charge more than it costs us to process an application. And we take a wild guess at that sort of thing. And I would say almost every application, we are substantially lower than it would actually cost us. So a surcharge is another way for counties who are really at the margin. So their fees are much higher than ours. And they can't justify a fee increase based on their actual cost, but they can impose a surcharge.
Well, I think I would agree with Commissioner Winholtz. If we're not in that situation, then let's just make it in the fee, and then people know exactly what they're gonna pay.
There, you bet. That's good feedback. And would you be inclined to raise those or not? Any of the fees?
Just incorporate that surcharge now.
I mean, if we were going to approve the surcharge, what's the difference?
Yeah. I would agree with that. I would say incorporate it.
The other editorial comment I'll make is, I understand that if we get to where it really costs to do it, then we're getting into the position that you said, Deschutes County. I mean, that's the thing there. And I guess as a citizen taxpayer, one of my questions is, if you're charging me for everything that you're doing, what am I paying taxes for? What am I getting? That is a county service that my property tax dollars should be helping subsidize this. So
I fully respect that. As a personal note, I would agree with you, but we have heard budget messages. We need to stay within the general fund. So if you're looking to the planning department to raise more money, we can do that. I like having our fees low. I also think the surcharge is fair because those projects for industry projects take a lot of time. And if you think of a land use permit, a $50 permit, ma and pa, that's a reasonable rate, your local taxpayers. Others,
yeah, but
they
10%
kind of,
is relative towards the size of your deals.
yeah.
I would actually just suggest that we kind of pin that for next year's discussion and say, keep the surcharge. But, then give us the challenge to do the time study. So we can have a true, because right now, if we raise the rates, they could come back and say, give us the empirical evidence of why you raised the rate. Technically, that's what she says, we can add a surcharge for this other aspect without triggering that. I know it's tomato and tomato in some ways when someone's paying for it. But
I think again,
I'm
some of
willing
the
to do
issues
either
go
way.
to $660, whether you charge them $660 at
Yes.
the front. Or you charge them 600 and down here on the bottom, there's a 10% adder.
But if we need to have a study to justify
Raise.
raising the fees, then I would be okay with having that 10% for now. And then let's get it out of there for next year.
Okay.
I can live with that.
Okay. Okay.
Yeah, I agree with you.
I'm glad that won't kill you.
It's a good, I appreciate the discussion a lot. So.
Anything else? Vinny, got anything to say about parks?
Now they're doing good.
We like to hear that.
Yeah. Fees all on, anything else, man?
That's all. I appreciate the direction on both the subjects for today's work session. So thank
Okay.
you.
All right.